For this section of the course, we will be discussing Excel's pivot tables. And pivot tables are one of the most powerful features inside of Microsoft Excel. Pivot tables allows us to extract significant data from a large detailed data set. So basically, we can create a summarized list of our data that we have interest in. And pivot tables come with many great features such as building reports, sorting, filtering, grouping, and the list goes on. And in the next few videos, we will cover some of these features, but for this lecture, we are going to focus on how we can create and insert a pivot table inside of our worksheet. So before we begin, I want to point out that we are working inside the Pivot Tables Sheet tab. So make sure that you have this tab selected. And just a quick tip, I know we have a lot of sheet tabs inside this workbook, and it might be tedious at times to use this arrow to scroll through the sheet tabs, but if you give this arrow a right click, it will give us a list of all the sheet tabs inside this workbook, and we can select the sheet that we want to activate. Our pivot table sheet is already selected, so I'm going to click OK. Now in order to create a pivot table, the first thing that we have to do is select our data. So what we can do is click any cell within our data set and then use the keyboard shortcut Control A or Command A if you're on Mac. And this will select all the data within our data set. And then we can come up to the Insert tab and select Pivot Table. And if we look inside this pop-up window, we can choose the location where we want to place our table. In this first box, shows the range of cells that include our data, so that's good. And then down here, we could either choose to insert our pivot table on a new worksheet or an existing worksheet. For this example, I'm going to select Existing Worksheet, and for the location, we can click inside this box and select a cell on this current worksheet. So that way we can have our data set and our pivot table on the same worksheet. So I'm going to select cell J2 and click OK. Now that we got our pivot table inserted into our spreadsheet, we have two new tabs within our ribbon, which are Pivot Table Analyze and Design. And we also have a Pivot Table Fields window pop up on the right side of our screen. And here's where we can select and rearrange our data for our pivot table. And if you noticed, these labels right here are the same as our column headers within our data set. So it's important to have headers within your data set when you're working with pivot tables. So let's start to create our first pivot table report. Let's say that we want to sum up all the cells for each product ID. Well, we can come over back to our fields window, and down here we have four different areas: filters, columns, rows, and values. And this is where we can drag our fields to rearrange our pivot table report. So let's just check cells and see what happens. Excel automatically put the cells within the values area. And up here in our report, it says that the sum of cells is $51,526. So automatically, Excel summed all the cells within the cells column. But we want to see the total cells for each product ID. And if we take a look at our product ID column, we can see that we have a product ID of D104, A101, D104, D104. So there's multiple product ID numbers, but they also get repeated. So what pivot tables can do is group these product IDs together and then sum the cells for each unique product ID. So if we select product ID, it automatically put it in the rows area. And now if we look at our report, we can easily tell that the sum of cells for the product ID of A101 was 10,470. And for the product of B102, the cells were 18,901, and so on. and then it also gives us a grand total of all the cells combined. So that's how you can create a pivot table. It's very quick and simple to do, and it can give us a lot of detailed information about our data. And over the next few videos, we'll start to discuss how we can modify, group, filter, and other neat features that pivot tables come with to reveal the advantages and benefits when it comes to utilizing pivot tables to build sophisticated reports.